After 30 years, it looks like Hank Azaria will no longer be voicing the Simpsons character, Apu.
But in an op-ed in The Guardian, Jacobin founder Bhaskar Sunkara makes the case for embracing the controversial character. He joins us now via Skype to expand on this. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me again. Pleasure.
Of course.
Good to see you, Bhaskar.
Okay, so could you just explain where this controversy came from, why some people are upset, and then make your case?
Well, I mean, I think vaguely people had thought for a long time that the Apu accent was kind of racist. And then a comedian, Ari Kondabolu, decided to do a documentary about it called The Problem with Apu. And, you know, in it, he kind of doesn't really say that Apu should be gotten away with. He just kind of vaguely expresses his discomfort with it. Then he interviews a bunch of famous Indian people who express their discomfort with it. The two working class-ish people that he does interview, his parents, are like, who is Apu? Oh, this is Apu. I don't think it's that bad. Yeah. The funniest part is they're like, what accent? And I guess if you have a thick Indian accent, you're like, what? This isn't an accent? Yeah. Homer's almost the accent.
Right, Bhaskar, I mean, from my perspective, it's just the height of privilege. I mean, I openly attack this comedian. I think he's incredibly whiny and insufferable because it's like, he blames Apu, it's like for his own problems of like maybe getting mocked whenever he was a kid. I mean, and something I really liked about your piece is you talked about embracing it. And you were like, yeah, there were some cringeworthy moments of it. And there was also, but at the same time, he's one of the most developed characters on the show. And it just shows the height of privilege to make this something that you're trying to critique and attack.
Yeah, I mean, The Simpsons is a comedy show with, you know, it's not been that funny in the last 10 years, but it used to at least be, you know, a comedy-based thing. And it has a bunch of zany, ridiculous characters. But Apu was one of the more developed characters. You know, they had him, they explained him as a family man with, like, kind of a morally consistent core. He had whole plot lines built around him. Some of my favorite episodes star Apu. And more than that, he was allowed to be zany and kooky and his own full, complex human beings. Nowadays, if you look at sitcoms that have, or cartoons that have representation from people of color, you know, that nebulous category, then you end up with just window dressing. It's just, they're there just to maybe prevent things like the article in Teen Vogue that said, why is Little Women so white? You know, it's literally just there for you know, window dressing.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, that's why soccer's here, just to prevent those kind of articles from being written about
this show. I think that's what it really highlights to me is that, you know, when we're talking about stereotypes and all of that, which is like, okay, you know, you're annoyed by being stereotyped, well then go out and do something that breaks the stereotype. And that's something that, I mean, yes, Apu was one of the main ways in which Americans might have identified an Indian in the 1980s. It was favorite pop culture. But now, I mean, you can look around there. You're one of the leading socialists in this country. You happen to be of Indian descent. I'm here. There are actors. There's like Republican presidential candidates who we may not all disagree with. I mean, that's kind of how you change stereotypes. You don't do it by getting a character canceled from The Simpsons. I don't think that does anything. If anything, it sets back the cause.
But even this, we don't necessarily just want Indians represented by Bobby Jindal and
of course,
and Hal Penn or whatever. You know, we actually have a whole host of South Asians that are working class people. You know, that are declassed immigrants and actually just like longstanding working class you know, communities. My mom's side of my family is from Trinidad, and you know that's a community, the Indo-Trinidadian community, that is mostly working class. Certainly not, you know, performing open heart surgeries or going to be the next attorney general. And that's okay. You know, I think that what part of the discomfort, I think, with Apu is that he's a crazy, zany, working class guy, I think. And you know, my main issue with this is that who's here deciding that this is an issue? I can understand if a handful of Indians are now upset, but all of a sudden this has become an issue. And it seems like the cultural sensibility of white viewers, particularly a layer of liberal white viewers, has shifted. That's the only thing that has changed since The Simpsons debuted. There's not a groundswell of immigrants that are now demanding that Apu get canceled because first of all, new immigrants are not watching The Simpsons, anymore. So it seems to me just this tiny elite, this fringe, gets to dictate the terms of culture for everyone else, and I just think it's not fair. It's not democratic.
You're exactly right.
I think you're totally right about that. It's also just interesting what so much energy gets devoted to versus the economic rights of Indian Americans or new immigrants, et cetera. But do you find it one of the cases that is made for why Apu is problematic, because I want to be fair to the case that's being made, is because he's voiced by a white actor. Is that problematic for you?
Well, I didn't know that, first of all, so I was surprised. Yeah. I'm like, hey, he nailed it. I don't know what to say. No, but I mean, in all seriousness, he's been doing the Apu voice, and he's a voice actor. And to me, Apu is a character. You don't really think that Homer is being voiced by, a human being. You're watching the thing. I think we have to separate Apu within the confines of The Simpsons, which is as an animated character, and Apu, who he's being voiced by. If there happens to be some other person, a person of South Asian descent, let's say, who could do the Apu accent, then sure, that would be fine, but the accent would be just as offensive. So, the real thing is, they're just not going to continue with this character, because it probably would be more offensive to ask a South Asian to just put on a very kind of hammy South Asian accents. But again, accents can be obviously derisive and hurtful and whatnot, but they could also be funny and a part of comedy. There's plenty of accents that I could do. I don't know, like drunk Irishman or something, and which Irish people may or may not find offensive. But I think that's just part of comedy. The question is, when it comes to violating people's civil rights, direct incitement, when it comes to violating their right to live in this country and to make a living and to take care of their families. I mean, those are the things I actually care about. And The Simpsons was never mean-spirited, and certainly didn't foster a culture of right-wing resentment or backlash. And there's no reason for us to be worried about a few people getting offended by an accent. Because again, I don't think this is really widespread. I think this is a media event. I could understand why an Indian comedian who made a documentary, wanted this argument out there. That's fine. If anything, I understand this as kind of a vehicle for his work, and this is obviously what he believes. But I just don't understand these continual waves since this thing came out 2 years of just all of a sudden discomfort and anger at a very, very long-standing kind of institution for both good and bad of American comedy, which is, The Simpsons and Apu in particular.
Yeah,
so interesting.
I very appreciate that perspective, and I know why I did it, because it's an easy way to grift. So thank you, Bhaskar. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Bhaskar.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, good
of course.
Man. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.